Hi everyone, this is For the Love of Comics, and in today's episode we'll be talking about Batman Year One, the classic Batman story written by Frank Miller and illustrated by David Mazzucchelli, with colors and recolors by Richmond Lewis. We'll be answering the questions: what is Batman Year One, what is it about, and most importantly, what makes it special? Which it is. Even today, more than 30 years after Year One was first published, it remains a sleek, lean, tense, and pretty grounded look at one of the world's most famous superheroes, and can be enjoyed irrespective of what you have and have not read before. This video will be a general introduction and me telling you why I love it, just like all of our What Is videos. In the upcoming weeks, we plan to upload some closer looks at various editions of Year One, so be sure to check back in. Or if you haven't already, subscribe and click on the bell icon to be notified of new uploads. But right now, let's get into what is Batman Year One. Year One was originally published in 1987 as 4 issues of the monthly Batman series from DC Comics, specifically numbers 404, 405, 406, and 407 between February and May of '87. Written by Frank Miller and illustrated by David Mazzucchelli, these 4 chapters told a complete and standalone story of Bruce Wayne and Jim Gordon arriving in Gotham City and separately establishing themselves within it over the course of 1 year. The name of this 4-issue arc was Year One, which was changed to Batman Year One when the collected edition was published 10 years later in 1997. Batman Year One was a commercial and critical success both when originally published and when collected and reprinted. But if anything, its reputation has only increased with the passing years. Year One never reached the sales or the historical significance of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, published a year before in 1986, but many fans and critics feel that Year One, with its noir take on a gangsters and corruption environment, is the more accomplished work. Personally, I agree with them. Batman Year One starts with both Bruce Wayne, long-absent billionaire heir, returning to Gotham City, as well as James Gordon, a police lieutenant, being transferred into Gotham in what looks like punishment for something. From there, the story proceeds in parallel, following Gordon as he encounters corruption within the police department and town hall, as well as Bruce Wayne, who has been preparing himself over many years for a war on crime but is unsure of how to proceed. The book takes us through 12 months in which Bruce Wayne finds his feet and establishes himself as the vigilante Batman, working his way up the food chain, and Jim Gordon makes a name for himself in spite of the rot around him and becomes a threat to the status quo himself. Their positions on either side of the law and the establishing of the connection between them is the backbone of the story. But the book also touches upon how crime at the lowest levels and corruption at the highest feed off of each other and enable each other, and also the tolls that living by certain principles can have on you. Batman Year One is a simply but tightly plotted, fast-paced, lean and mean, gritty superhero noir. It stays grounded by foregoing colorfully costumed villains and plots of world domination and focusing instead on organized crime and political corruption as the central evils. But in my opinion, there are 2 things in particular that put Year One above and beyond just being a good superhero comic and take it into the great comic levels. The first is the art style of David Mazzucchelli. It is sleek and simple, full of just the right detail. The action feels brutal, the shadowy, almost supernatural appearance of Batman is wonderfully grounded in reality, and the environments of Gotham City feel as dark and dangerous in the penthouses as they do on the streets. Mazzucchelli's art matches perfectly with Miller's writing, which runs the risk of getting overheated a couple of times, but is wonderfully pulled back by the restrained yet stylish visual presentation. And that's the winning combo for me here: heated writing, chilled art. The second thing that elevates Batman Year One over so many others for me is something I don't see discussed a lot, even though it is extremely obvious to anyone who has read this book. That is, the storytelling decision to be as much Gordon's story as it is Wayne's or Batman's. In fact, I did a rough panel count, and Gordon's story takes up around 230 panels and Wayne and Batman take 245. That's pretty close. And really, from the very first page through every chapter, Gordon and Bruce Wayne mirror each other, at times reaching towards the same goal through different means, at other times placed in opposition to each other without wanting it. This mirroring is so boldly and simply done, with so much packed into essentially vignettes making up a lean story, that it would take a separate video to analyze this thoroughly. But Gordon is the emotional and moral center of the story. He arguably accomplishes more with far less, and it is only after establishing a relationship with him right at the end of the book do we feel that Bruce Wayne is finally Batman. By allowing us to have Gordon going through everyday crises with both his work and his marriage, and showing us the ultimately heroic way he tackles them, Year One keeps Batman in the shadows, coming to us through hard-boiled narration and in action scenes. This not only maintains for Batman a dark and tortured, mysterious and laconic image, but at the same time allows us to transfer some of those emotional reactions for Gordon onto Batman when they eventually connect. In a comic where the hero is learning to become super, it's the growth of the unsuperhero getting equal time and him making us like the superhero by proxy, all through tight writing and slickly balanced art, that puts Batman Year One into that other level for me. And that's where I'll leave it for today, although I'll be returning to this comic soon. Watch this space. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like button, and as always, we'd love to have your questions and comments down below. This has been For the Love of Comics. Thank you for watching.